This program is brought to you by realestate.com.au. With more homes for sale than anywhere else, realestate.com.au is Australia's #1 address in property.
Welcome back. There are 2,292 properties scheduled to be auctioned this week. That's 20% more than the same week last year. New South Wales will hold about 1,000 auctions with roughly 800 in Sydney. Victoria will hold about 1,000 as well with roughly 900 in Melbourne. Queensland will hold about 200 auctions with about half of them in Brisbane. South Australia will hold 85 auctions with most of them in Adelaide. Western Australia, Tasmania and the NT will hold 16 auctions between them. And the ACT will hold 69 auctions. Taking a look at the most viewed properties going to auction this weekend, and in New South Wales, top property is 12 Robina Street, St Ives. The house is completely run down and probably should be demolished, but the asking price is about $1.7 million. Top property in Victoria is 26A Alfata Street, Caulfield South. Asking price is $1 to $1.1 million. Top property in Queensland is 32 Windsor Place, Carindale. This large three-bedder sits on about 600 square metres. Top property in South Australia is 21 Lawrence Street, South Plympton. This renovated mid-century home has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms and a large backyard. And the top property in Canberra is 6 Coon Place, Nichols. This 5-bedder has more than 500 metres of internal living space. It's very modern with lots of concrete. And the most viewed property on the REA Group website this week is totally unlivable. The address is 650 Woori Yallock Road, Cockatoo, Victoria. That's about 1 hour's drive east of Melbourne. The property sits on 13 acres, but as you can see, it needs a lot of work. It's covered in graffiti and weeds and is missing its windows. It looks like the perfect place to set up a paintball business. The structure includes 14 rooms, 4 en-suites, 3 large balconies and a giant staircase. The agents aren't even sure if the electricity, water or gas are connected. Price guide for this is $1.1 to $1.2 million. And for more on the property market, I caught up with Eleanor Creagh from REA Group a little bit earlier.
Yes, certainly that's the case. We know that buyers are continuing to benefit from that increased choice with more properties coming to market. Now, that's particularly the case in New South Wales and Victoria. Although we're seeing auction volumes are just a little bit lower than last week, they're still significantly up compared to this time last year. So up around 20% on this same period last year. And next week, we're set to see even more homes going to auction. So close to 25,000, and that's a little over 40% uplift on this same period last year. So certainly much more choice out there for buyers.
Yeah, when there is more choice, what does that mean for clearance rates? Do clearance rates typically go down a little bit because there's just so many more homes that a buyer can choose to purchase?
That's often what we see. So we typically see that with an increase in choice, market conditions become a little bit more balanced. There's a little bit less competition. Buyers maybe don't feel the need to bid up prices quite so much, or there's just simply more choice. So they have other options and a little bit more power at the negotiating table. And you often do see that clearance rates do head a little bit lower when we have that increase in choice. But clearance rates have so far been pretty robust this year.
Obviously, interest rates have been elevated for a long time, but sales volumes seem to be really strong this year.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we know that increase in choice that buyers are facing at the moment really reflects that uplift in seller confidence. But we're also seeing an uplift in buyer confidence, I think, with interest rates remaining stable and people looking ahead to the next move potentially being lower. We're seeing that buyers are kind of putting that increased confidence into action, and sales volumes are up significantly compared to this time last year. So nationwide, they're up a little over 20%. But Sydney and Melbourne are really leading that charge with sales volumes in Sydney up more than 40% compared to this same period last year.
Yeah, and Melbourne up 38%. So pretty significant increases here across the country. Big
jumps in sales volumes and really reflective, I think, of that strength in market conditions or improvement in market conditions that we saw last year, really continuing into this year, and that confidence that stability in or that the interest rate stable environment is providing buyers.
Now, one story that we see pop up quite a bit at the moment is rental vacancies. How is the rental market tracking right now?
Look, the rental market remains incredibly challenging. Although rental market conditions eased ever so slightly in March, rental vacancy rates still remain very close to historic lows. Now in Adelaide, Brisbane and Perth, rental vacancy rates are still sub 1%. So really indicative of what we would call crisis conditions in the rental market still. Under those conditions, it's going to be incredibly challenging for many to find an available rental. So we're continuing to see strong upward pressure on rental prices and strong competition in the rental market as a result, particularly in those markets.
Yeah, I guess when there's less than 1% rental vacancy, you eventually find a home to rent. Do you then have to, in some cases, pay more or bid more in the rent you're going to pay each week just to secure that property? Are you seeing that? Are prices really jumping quite a bit?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's certainly the case in that not only are these conditions very challenging for renters, but properties are leasing out very quickly. The upward pressure on rental prices is placing pressure on household budgets, but many are having to compete to find an available rental and bid up rental prices as a result. So we've seen that over the past year, rental prices have risen about 9%. Now, that's being driven by the capital city markets where rental prices are up a little over 13%. But in those markets that are tightest, so Adelaide, Perth and Brisbane, those rental price pressures are even more extreme. So in Perth, we've got rental prices up more than 15% over the past year. So really continued strength in rental price growth in those really tight rental markets.
Yeah, look, we know construction sector's still lagging. There's not enough new properties being built in apartments, but how far off do you think relief is for the rental sector? Are we looking at 1 year away here?
Look, it's a really tough question to answer. We know that there's no meaningful increase in the supply of available rentals coming. We know that approvals are sitting around decade lows. We know that completions are just not where they need to be, and that we have this fundamental demand-supply mismatch that is affecting the rental market, but also the market for existing homes. So affordability is at the worst point in 3 decades for buyers. Rental affordability is at historic lows. So we really have this fundamental housing shortage. And unfortunately, without increasing the supply of housing, so increasing how much housing we're building, we are going to continue to see these pressures in rental markets.
Well, Eleanor Creagh from REA Group, thanks for coming on the program this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.